how I start Finnish 2+2. So I thread my needle. And we're going to do this left-handed this time. So I'm going to take the tail of my thread and I'm going to stick it between the pads of my pointer finger and my thumb. And I'm going to pinch using my knuckle so that I pinch with the whole pad, not just the tip, but my whole knuckle. And tail, usually just long enough to be about that long. And then I take, this is my right hand, this is my left hand, that's my stomach, that's my feet, that's down to my legs, this is up towards my face, so to help you orient. So I'm going to wrap the thread down and around my thumb so that it goes all the way around my thumb. Okay, and I want it to fall on the body side of the previous edge. I'm going to touch the tip of my needle to my thumb on the tip side of the loop around my thumb. Now I'm keeping it relatively perpendicular to the work because I will be connecting into the previous row down here. And I'm going to slide out underneath the cross, so under both strands around my thumb. I'm going to point away from me and pull towards me so that I pull down my thumb, which causes a new loop to form, a new thumb loop to form, and I want it to form on the body side of the last thumb loop. Now, if I pull this way, it's going to want to push it out of the way. So I want to pull down my hand, and then I want to make certain that this loop falls on the body side of my thumb loop for Finnish 2+2, because I need 2 loops here, 1, 2. And now we're going to start the process of forming the 2 loops on the back. So having gotten those 2 loops around my thumb, and I want to be able to feel them, but only just feel them around my thumb because they will get tighter as we work. And I like to keep them over my cuticle as a standard place because this is my tension for the stitch. So then I'm going to touch the tip of my thumb from down and away from me and slide under both loops to form 1 more thumb loop around my thumb. And again, I want this to fall on the body side of the last 2. So I'm going to form this thumb loop and I want it just a little bit looser than both of the rest of them because it will tighten up as I go. Okay, so that formed on the body side of my thumb. Now I'm going to take this last loop, the first loop that I made, the first one I wrapped around my thumb, and I'm going to drop that off the tip of my thumb. And I'm just pushing it off. I'm not pulling it down. I'm not twisting it. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm just pushing it off. Then I'm going to touch the tip of my thumb. I'm going to slide out through that loop and I'm going to lay over the top of that loop. And then I'm going to slide underneath the 2 loops around my thumb and my working thread. Okay. I'm going to pinch the whole thing, point away from me, and pull to form a new thumb loop. It's going to fall on the body side of my last 2 thumb loops. Oops, see, it wants to pop off. I have to be careful about the twist to make sure that it falls on the body side of my thumb loops. Okay, so now I have 3 thumb loops. I'm going to take the oldest of the thumb loops and drop it off the tip of my thumb. So just push it off. So now I've got the 2. Now the trick here is that my thumb is an oval. So I have a flattish side here and a flattish side here and 2 shorter sides here. And much of the work I need to do is with the upper portion of these loops and with that. And if I do that with my straight needle, this is not the most space to work in. I have a little bit more here. So I find it convenient if I grab the whole work by the heart here and scoot it down so that my loops kind of lay slightly off to the left side of my thumb, kind of like a offset halo here. All right, so now I'm going to pinch again and I'm going to touch the tip of my thumb, and I'm going to slide out through those 2 loops, over those 2 loops, and then under the loops around my thumb and my working thread. So this is Finnish 2, 1, 2, plus 2, 1, 2. And the reason it's a plus is that there's a change in direction. So here I'm going over those 2, and here I'm going under them, and the same as the vice versa on the other side. And I'm going to again point away from me and pull to form a new thumb loop around my thumb on the body side of the previous 2 thumb loops. Okay. And then I'm going to repeat the process. I drop the first thumb loop off. I'm going to pick up only the last 2 thumb loops. So I'm going to come thumb side out through the last 2 thumb loops. And the way you can tell which are your last 2 thumb loops is that the last one doesn't go under anything before it gets up to this edge. The one before that goes under one of your thumb loops around your thumb, but not under the next one. And the third loop that we don't want to pick up goes under 2 of your thumb loops before it comes up towards the edge. So I'm going to touch tip my thumb, come out through those last 2 loops and only the last 2 loops, over them, under the cross, kind of squish it down a little bit, pinch, point away from you and pull, form a new thumb loop around the thumb on the body side of your previous thumb loops. Then I'm going to drop the first thumb loop off. You can use your needle to do this or just your thumb. I'm going to take the last 2 thumb loops, thumb side out through the last 2 loops, over those same 2 loops, and then under my thumb loops and my working thread. Point away from me and pull. Now, when I'm pinching here, I'm holding everything in there. I don't want my loops to move. The only thing I want to move is the thread that is being pulled by my working strand. If I let any of the rest of it move, it will cause all of these loops to shift and twist. Now, this isn't exactly the nicest yarn for showing a nice flat row, but it is good for seeing the details. So I'm going to drop that last thumb loop off my thumb. I'm going to come thumb side out through those 2 loops, over those 2 loops, under the thumb loop and my working strand, pinch the whole thing, oops, and under the working strand. Point away from me and pull to form a new thumb loop around the thumb. And we just keep repeating that. Until it comes time to connect. And then when I want to connect, or I want to pivot, I'm going to turn the work over, and you can see that I've got a kind of a braid-like function with loops, one side of the braid touching my thumb and the other side away. And this is the bottom edge. When I want to turn and pivot, I want to turn this way so that I'm pivoting around to the right, to the left around it. In order to be able to get to those loops better, I want to give them a little bit of a yank. So I'm going to pull on these loops, not too hard on the upper ones because those are still connected to working stitches, but these lower ones, I can give a really good yank so that I can actually get everything nice and neat and down to where I don't make a mistake and grab this inner line, but I will always grab my outer line. Okay. Now, the front side of my work, the technical front, is the side facing me. So this is the technical front of the work. This is the technical back. And I'm going to grab from the edge. I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to take my 4 and 5. And I'm going to take 4, 5, and 4. So this is an F2 connection because I'm piercing the fabric from the front to the back and I'm taking 2 loops. So I took 1 loop from the edge and then I took the second loop from the edge and I went right through that cross between the two. Okay, then I'm going to drop that loop off the tip of my thumb. I'm going to touch the tip of my thumb with my needle, slide out through those last 2 loops. Now you can see part of why I prefer to keep my needle relatively perpendicular to my thumb, over those 2 loops and under the loops around my thumb and my working thread, keeping them all in order. And pull down and towards me to form a new thumb loop around my thumb. Then I'm going to go in that same stitch. I'm going to follow this thumb loop through those same 2 loops, doing an increase in this point so that I can start pivoting around. So then I'm going to take that last thumb loop off my thumb. I'm going to touch the tip of my thumb, slide out through that thumb loop and the next loop. And this one's always going to look larger because this one's involved in the pivot. And so it gets pulled in tighter over the top of those same 2 loops and then under my working thread and under my thumb loops and my working thread. Pointing away from me and pull. Keeping a relatively soft tension. Now I've done 2 stitches in that same spot. And if I would it around a little bit, you can see that I'm managing to pivot some. So instead of going down my thumb, it's now going perpendicular away from me. If I continue to do stitches in exactly that same hole, I'm going to get a hole. So I'm just going to take one of those 2 stitches, the one further away of those 2 stitches instead of both of them. And this will help seal up the hole. Then I'm going to take the tip, my old thumb loop off of my thumb, slide out through the 2 loops, over the 2 loops, over them and under my thumb loops and my working thread. I often have to place my working thread when I'm working with multiple thumb loops like this. Point away from me, pull, and form a new thumb loop. Okay. And then I'm going to repeat that particular connection stitch. So that's where my last thumb loop went through. So I'm going to follow that. I'm going to reach back and get my thumb loop off of my thumb, the one at the tip of my thumb, the oldest of the 3 thumb loops. Then I'm going to touch the tip of my thumb, slide out through the last 2 loops, 1 and 2. It's slipping. There we are. And over them and under the cross and my working thread. Pinch and pull. And 4 stitches is usually enough to get me turned around, but this is a bit more of a compound stitch. So it looks like I need at least a little bit more, but I have my 1, this would be an F1 connection, and I would be doing an increase if I went straight in there. This is my next loop on the edge. So this is a new loop. That's an old one. Because she's doing Finnish 2+2, we're going to take 1 new and 1 old. And then we're going to drop that last thumb loop off the tip of our thumb. Slide out through that loop and out through the next loop in. But you'll notice they got a little crossed here, and I can tell because this is the one that doesn't go under anything. This one, that inner one there, is the one that only goes under 1 strand, and it's the one underneath it that goes under 2. So my 1, 2 is this one and that one, not this one and that one. That's number 3. I only want these 2 over both of them, under the cross, pinch, drop. Well, no dropping in Finnish 2+2. And to pull, not until later in the stitch. Form the new thumb loop on the body side of my thumb. Okay. And that has me turned pretty much around. So now I can take my next F2. So this was F2 one. I've got an old one and a new old one. And then this is a new. So to take my, well, this is the new. So I want to take an F2. So I want to move one stitch further to the left. So one new and one old. Drop the oldest thumb loop. Touch the tip of my thumb, slide out through the two loops, over the two loops, under my thumb loops and the working thread. Pinch. And point away from me and pull. Form a new thumb loop around my thumb, again, further down on the body side of my thumb. And I keep doing this until I get to the end. So one new, one old, drop the thumb loop, the oldest thumb loop, thumb side out through the last two loops only, over both of them, under the thumb loops around my thumb and my working thread, and form a new thumb loop. Now here I'm running out of loops. So here are my two old ones that I went through the last time, and here's my new one. So one new, one old, drop the thumb loop, thumb side out through the last two, over the last two, under my thumb loops and my working thread to form a new thumb loop around my thumb on the body side of my thumb. All right, now I've used all of them up. Now I'm going to continue to go around. I'm going to spiral. So I came down here, came around, I went up this way. Now I'm going to spiral around in this direction. Now I have to pivot around this point, which is a bigger point than this one. So this took me 4 to 5 stitches. This one's going to take me 6 to 8 to get around. And if I do them all right here, I'm going to end up with a very big hole, but I can put one more of them there. Touch the tip of my thumb, drop the thumb loop off, pick up from touch the tip of my thumb, slide out through my two loops, over my two loops, under my thumb loops and my working strand, and the working strand. Form a new thumb loop that I want to form on the body side of my previous thumb loops. Thank you. All right, now we're going to do the same trick we did last time, which is we're going to just take one of the two, drop the thumb loop, thumb side out through the two loops, over the two loops, under the cross, and the working strand, form a new thumb loop. Now we've got to do some more increases in here. And as I said, 2 in the same spot will generally do, but the trick I've got here is that if I keep right around here, I'm really going to expand this space. So I'm actually going to sneak all the way deep in here and snag this one and those two, just to make sure that I seal up that hole. I hate having holes in my freshly nail-bound work. Then I'm going to drop the oldest thumb loop off the tip of my thumb. I'm going to touch the tip of my thumb and slide out through my two loops, over my two loops, over both of them, and under the cross of my thumb loops and working strand. I'm going to form a new thumb loop. And then I'm going to sneak out to grab, instead of staying on this side of it, I'm going to take those 3. Actually, no, I'm going to skip all the way out and just grab these 2 again. It really doesn't matter which ones you do, as long as you move around every 1 or 2, then you will end up not forming a hole in that spot. It's as long as you stay reasonably in the same space, it will help you pivot. And under the working strand. Remember to do a little woodgy here. Okay. And I'm going to grab just the inner one and drop the thumb loop off. Thumb side out through those last two loops, over those last two loops, under my thumb loops and my working strand, form a new thumb loop. Okay. Now I'm gonna take these two, drop the thumb loop off. Touch the tip of my thumb to be able to come out through both loops, that one and not this one, because that's the one around my thumb. I want that one in there. There we go. Over them and under the loops around my thumb and my working thread. Form a new loop around my thumb. All right. Now, it really is going to start depending on what I want to make. If I keep doing more increases, I can keep this flat and have a relatively flat oval. Or I can just start working along the edge and allow it to start to cup if I'm wanting to make a mitten, because this is a nice 3 fingers length strip. And I'll just add increases to be able to make room for my fingertips, for my next ones. And as you can see, as you come along this edge, you've got, I took 2 old ones last time. That's where my thumb loop goes through. You can see it goes through there. And so I want one new one and the newest of the old ones. Take that thumb loop, the oldest thumb loop off my thumb. Come thumb side out through those 2 loops, over those 2 loops, under the cross and my working thread. If I twist here, I would never have room for my thumb anymore. Okay. Again, keep your thumb loops relatively loose because you do need the space. All right, so my next stitch, that was my old stitch with those 2. My next one, that's my working tail. I want to watch out for that. Yeah, I need one new one from the edge plus one of the old ones, the oldest of the old ones, so that I'm working down the row each time. Going to take that oldest thumb loop off, thumb side out through the 2 loops, over the 2 loops, under the cross. All right, so if I want to do an increase, keep my thumb loops in the proper order there. If I want to do an increase, I can just follow my thumb loops through those same old 2 loops that I did, and then grab my old thumb loop and take the 2. If I want to do a decrease, instead of taking one new and one old, I will just grab 2 new ones and then drop my thumb loop and take over my 2, under my 2, under my 2, over my 2, and under the cross. There we go. Like so, and that will give me a decrease. And again, be gentle with those thumb loops or you're going to get so tight that you can't do your work. So you want a soft tension on those thumb loops, no purple thumbs. And you just continue like so. That is Finnish 2+2. F2. You can also do it as an F1, which would be just taking one new loop instead of taking one new and one old. But the 2+2 part is the fact that you have 2 thumb loops remaining around your thumb while you are taking the 2 inner loops off your thumb and then up and under the cross. So what that looks like when it's on your needle is under, under, over, over, and then you start coming back out. So that's where the slash enhancement comes in. Under, under, over, over, over. And then of course the F2 would have been the connection that you did that I described earlier. Now, of course, if I was to read this, I would be reading it going the other direction, and it's going to read backwards for me. So it's not quite Finnish 2+2. It will give you the chevrons going in the opposite direction of a right-handed person, but that is what we have. I hope it helps.